In this module, we're going to start looking at the backend Node.js server. We've already been running this with the React app, so we can assume it's already installed on our PC. So we're going to rename our front-end React app, front-end UI, and then we're going to create a new folder for our backend server. So we have two separate folders, one containing the UI code and one in a separate folder creating and holding our backend Node.js server. We're going to run the command npm init-y. That's going to go and create a package.json folder for us. This is the main entry point and file that we need for our Node modules. So we're going to create an app.server, app.js. This is our first Node.js file. This will be the entry point for our backend server. And then we can create a modules folder. This is where our custom modules are going to live. This is where our watchlist module is going to live. What we want to do is we want to create a container for our logic for our watchlist. We're going to add static data now with the intention that eventually we will be saving and persisting to a database in later modules. So we're going to create a simple JavaScript file with a few methods or functions. We're going to create a function here for adding an item, and we can use our ES6 arrow functions. We're going to take the cryptocurrency symbol as the item that we're going to track. So we can add that as a parameter to our function. And then we're also going to want to remove an item from our watch list. Again, the key will be the cryptocurrency symbol. We need to remember these are ES6 arrow functions. So we're creating our CRUD operations here, add, remove, and fetch, or get. A get takes no parameters. So these are JavaScript functions. And it's a good idea. We'll just add some console logs here just to make sure that we're calling into them. What the intention is, we're going to call this module from the app.js file. We're going to use a template literal there and just kind of echo back whichever symbol has been passed into our add item. And then we can do the same for remove item and the same for get item as well. Reuse and apply, and we'll just change this to remove item. We can apply the same console log to our get items, and eventually we're going to echo out our static list here. So once these console logs have been created, the key thing to remember is these are private by default. So in Node.js world, we need to use modules.export and export out our functions so that they are public to the outside caller. Right now, if we did not export them, we would not be able to call them or have any way to invoke them. They would be private by default. So it's similar to object-oriented programming, public and private. So here now, we can import them. However, out of the box, they have another keyword called require. So require works very similar to the import that we know from the React module. And we need to require a custom module here. Need to make sure that we're navigating correctly to the modules folder, and now we have the watchlist module. Now we just want to test that those methods are visible and they are working. So we have the watchlist module, and we don't see them because we did not export them in the correct way. We can try to call this and run it. It'll probably throw an error. Now remember, we can use node command to run this. However, also there's another npm package that I recommend you install called nodemon, and that's the node monitoring tool if you don't have it. So back inside of our watchlist module, we're not exactly exporting correctly. So we need to use module.export. That's the actual correct way of writing this. So now if we go back, our module is exported. We should be able to pass in symbol BTC, and we can see it's running in the console. So it's visible, it's running. Now you'll see when we use a dot notation here, we'll have the other function methods for remove item, calling into it, you can see the method is now console logging, and then the final one is the get items. We're just testing initially here that our functions are visible and that we are calling them. So what we need to do now, because we don't have any database yet, we're going to create a temporary cache. And all the cache will be is it'll be a running data list or a JavaScript array. So here we can create our own internal little array to track the items. We would persist to the database. Our front end could call back and we could track it. However, if our server ever stopped, our data would be lost. So it's a temporary cache. So we're creating an array here, and what we're going to do is add, as items are being added, we're going to push that symbol into the array. And when we're removing, we're going to filter out. And then, of course, the get items will just return this watch list data. So let's do this. We could add some very basic checks here. We could add some little validation here to check if the symbol actually exists or not. If it doesn't exist, using truthy falsy in JavaScript, if it doesn't exist, we will return out of this function, or we could console log an error just to let our logger know that there is no symbol to add. Once we create our message here, it's a little bit of a check. We can apply it to any of these other methods here, especially the remove is important. So the symbol is not valid. So we have a little check here. And now we can add to our list or our data cached array. .push is part of the array list items that come baked into JavaScript. And then we can just return the whole array here. Next up, we will probably need to remove the item. So we're going to need to use a filter mechanism. So just to test this out a little bit, we'll add a couple of items here. So we have multi items in the array. So we'll add ADA and we'll add Ethereum, and we'll make sure that we're console logging. We're seeing that we're adding these items. And then what we would like to do is then remove the items and then see if the result has changed. So if we run it, we see we have two items, BTC and ADA. So we have Bitcoin and Cardano. We're going to add a third item for Ethereum. So we have those three symbols if we see in our console log. And they're fetching properly and they're removing properly. So the last step is we need to actually implement the remove item. After we remove the item, we want to check that that item has been removed. So we're going to call get items a second time. And we can see here that no change has been made yet. So now we need to go and implement. Just remember the JavaScript documentation. If you need to look at any of these JS ES6+ methods, it's all in this documentation. So I want to use the array filter mechanism. And here's a little example on how to do that. It'll filter out any criteria and return back a new array. So we can go into our watch list module, into our remove item function, and then we would like to filter out the symbol from the list that we are passing in or want to remove. So here we want to filter out the symbol. We're just going to call this filtered list, and we're going to use that array filter method that we saw from the ES6+ docs. It's going to take a predicate, could be a function or be some type of inline arrow function. It's going to iterate through each item in the data list, and it's going to check if that symbol is valid or not. It's basically going to return us a new list with the removed target item symbol filtered out. So if we pass in Ethereum, it's going to give us a list that does not have Ethereum in it. So after we get the filtered list, we're going to set it to our current cache. We use the constant keyword. So we need to remember constant does not allow us to overwrite it. So we change it to let. And you can see now that it's running. We're adding 3 items. We're fetching them. And then we're removing the one by symbol. We remove ETH. And now you can see the new list has only 2 items in it. So we have a cached little CRUD module here working, getting it ready. We are obviously going to connect to a database, and we're going to do this in real time so that when we are adding to the database and deleting from the database, when we fetch the database, it'll be the current state of that database. But for now, we don't have that connection. So for now, we're working with this static cache data set. Just remember though, when I stop my server, the data will be gone.